Thank you for downloading NurseMind. In this brief video, you'll see three of its most powerful features. The most important feature of this app is the checklists. After all, it's a checklist app. And we can view the checklist in a couple of different forms. One is simply as a traditional linear list. I can see all my tasks for all my patients combined into a single list. Now, some of these have a red background. That means the task actually is late. That is, its deadline has come and gone. Well, you can see it's now 1:15, and this particular task here, Aldrete, was due at 1:10. This task here, monitoring cardiac status, was due at 1:05, so it's late. I can click on it when I finally get around to doing it, put a check in the done box here, and the task is gone from the list, although it hasn't actually gone. What it's done is it's moved down to the bottom of the list. I can always go down and view what tasks I have completed if I need to. Just make sure that I did something and marked it off. The second format in which I can look at my task list, that is my nursing checklist, is in the display called Shift at a Glance. This uses a metaphor, a visual metaphor that we call the river of time. And the way it's organized is the time axis moves from right to left. See, I can look in the future, I can scroll and see what tasks are coming up. This time is shown here in the middle. Each column represents a half hour of my shift, and each row represents a patient. And I can look at a patient in detail by clicking on them. Here's my patient. This patient is named PPP. I have a precaution. We're worried about weight bearing for this patient. I can look at them in more detail by clicking on the box. And similarly, I can look at an individual task by clicking on it, just as I did in that other list. And so, for example, I've now finished the task of getting report on this patient. I can mark it done. Go back to at a glance. There it is. That task has now turned green because it's done. Now, another important feature of this display is that I can shrink it down, and this is why we call it Shift at a Glance. I can see at a glance what my day looks like. Here it is. Each column is a half an hour. I can scroll right to see what's coming up, scroll left to see what's been done. This yellow line here represents now. And in fact, this whole display is scrolling slowly from right to left at a rate of 5 pixels per minute. That's too slow to be visible, but over time it does move. And looking ahead, I can see, for example, here I've got a cluster of tasks. Maybe I should get a head start on those once I get all these tasks finished up. And I can see a little further down the line, this part of my day is fairly open. There aren't any tasks there, so that's probably a good time to take my break. Now, another important feature, I'm going to restore this to its original size. Here we go. And here's my shift at a glance. Now, another important feature here, valuable feature, is this status button. This shows me at a glance, down at the bottom here, the status of my shift. I have 107 tasks remaining to be done, of which 24 of them are late. Turns out the time that I need to do all these tasks is 8 hours and 29 minutes, whereas the time remaining in my shift is 8 hours and 12 minutes. I don't have enough time to do everything. That's why this box has turned red. Ordinarily it's green. This tells me I'm in trouble. I better get help. Okay, let me mark a few more tasks as being done, and then we'll see that when I have enough tasks done, I get caught up. We'll see that box at the bottom turns from red to green when it turns out I've gotten back on top of my shift and everything's under control. All right, I'm just getting caught up on my to-do list here, Marking tasks as done. And as you can see now, the time needed is 8 hours and 1 minute. The time remaining is 8 hours and 11 minutes. This box has turned green because I'm not in trouble anymore. I've gotten caught up. Okay, now another valuable feature is this row that has a picture not of a patient, but of the hospital. In other words, this row contains tasks that are not for any individual patient, but rather, well, here's an example. This task is doing my hourly patient rounds. I do that for all my patients. Or you could say I do it for the hospital rather than for any individual patient. I can mark that one as done as well, like any other task. Now, here's a second powerful feature, besides these to-do lists, of the NurseMind app, and that is for the certain tasks involve the collection of data. For instance, this task here is a vital signs task. Okay? And traditionally, what I would have done is mark down the vital signs on a piece of paper, and then later on transcribe them into the chart, either electronically or on paper. There's a faster way to do that using the app. I click on vital signs here, and for example, I can say, oh, what is my patient's pulse, HR, heart rate, save it, boom, done. Okay? How about respirations? This one is especially powerful. Instead of looking at my wristwatch, I just tap every time I see the patient's chest rise. They take a breath, they take another breath, another breath. Okay, there we go. Now I know my patient's breath rate. I can save it. My patient's respiration rate. That's done. Similarly, blood pressure. I use these things. Apple calls them pickers. Systolic and diastolic. Save. Temperature, I can enter it either in centigrade or Fahrenheit. I can put in my patient's oxygen saturation and whether or not they're receiving oxygen from a mask or a cannula. Save that. And finally, there's the famous fifth vital sign, which is the patient's pain. And that's traditionally on a scale of 0 to 10. How much pain do you have? Oh, I have 3. And what is your goal? That is, how much pain can you tolerate? Oh, well, I can tolerate up to, say, a 4. And I save that. And I'm done. Okay, later on, I can come back and retrieve all my different patients' vital signs at different times when I'm ready to do the transcription task. So that's a second powerful feature of NurseMind. The to-do lists, the data entry, and now here's a third one. Often I need to refer to another scrap of paper that I might carry in my pocket, or perhaps a post-it on my badge, to look up some phone number, or perhaps I want to look up the, well, here's a phone number, the dialysis unit, or I might need a code to enter a door. So here's the ambulance door. The door code is 5150. Now, some of this information I don't want to share with the world, okay? And it can be marked as restricted just to the employees of a hospital. But there's other information that I want to have even tighter security on. For example, here is my login to the electronic medical record, okay? And my login name is Kathy, and here's my password. That particular piece of information I want to restrict to myself alone. I don't want to share that with anyone. And indeed, I can decide with whom I want to share it. Okay, there are those 3 levels. You can share something with the whole world. You can share it simply with your hospital, restrict it to the hospital, or share it with no one but myself. And for the quick refs, this is information that I need to look up in a hurry. It's a very fine-tuned and rapid access method of of storing and retrieving that information. So those are just 3 of the many features of this powerful app. I hope you get a lot of use out of it, and give us feedback, and welcome to the population of happy nurses using NurseMind.